my wife sent a text. I am extending my girls' getaway by 1 week. Don't wait up for me. I replied, take your time. My lawyer finds these stories fascinating. Her panic calls started immediately and haven't stopped since. Thursday afternoon, my phone vibrated with a message that would change everything. My wife had been gone for 3 days on what she called a girls' getaway, and suddenly she announced that she was extending it for an extra week. The message was simple enough. Hey honey, I am having great time with the girls. I am extending the trip by a week. Don't wait up. I love you. But something seemed off immediately. First, she never called me honey in her texts. Second, the timing was weird. She had been radio silent for most of the trip, claiming bad cell service. But now she suddenly had perfect reception to send this. And a third, the entire tone just did not sound like her. I sat there staring at my phone for a good minute. We have been married for 6 years, and I knew her texting habits better than anyone. It was not her voice. It was too casual, too flippant. The woman who usually sent me 3 paragraphs about what she had for breakfast had just sent me a single line about extending a trip by an entire week. My gut told me to dig deeper, so I did what any reasonable person in the digital age would do. I checked her social media. She had posted stories from the trip, but when I looked closely, things got interesting. The background of these photos did not match the mountain resort where she said she was spending her days. I had looked it up online when she left, curious about where she was going. The place she had shown me online had a completely different aesthetic from what appeared in her photos. Then I noticed something else in one of her Instagram stories. From yesterday, there was a reflection in a window behind her. Not her friend's reflection, a man's reflection. A man whose silhouette I did not recognize, wearing a watch I had never ever before. That is when I decided to call the resort directly. Professional curiosity, you could say. I explained that I was trying to reach my wife who was staying there. I gave them her name and the dates she had mentioned. After checking their system, the representative politely informed me that they had no reservation under her name for those dates. Interesting. I leaned back in my chair and considered my options. I could confront her directly, but that would show my hand. I could wait and see how deep this rabbit hole went, but that felt passive. Or I could take a third approach, one that would allow me to get the truth quickly and keep control of the situation. I work in cybersecurity. I know how digital footprints work, and I know how to track them when necessary. Most importantly, I know that people get sloppy when they think they are being clever. My wife was about to learn that lesson the hard way. Over the next hour, I did some strategic digging. Her phone's shared location was still enabled with me, something she had apparently forgotten. According to her phone, she was not at a resort. She was at a private residence about 2 hours away from where she claimed to be. A quick search of county property records told me exactly who owned the house. The name did not ring a bell, but a social media search revealed everything I needed to know. A married man, recently separated, who posted photos of home renovations and talked about his new bachelor pad, the exact same bachelor pad where my wife's phone had been located for the last 3 days. I had my answer, but I wanted to see how far she would push the charade. So I crafted my reply carefully. I wanted it to be just ambiguous enough to make her wonder what I knew, but clear enough to let her know the game was changing. Take your time. My lawyer finds these stories fascinating. I typed it out, reread it twice, and hit send. My phone started ringing within 30 seconds. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately. Voicemail again. The third time I answered. Hey, honey, she said, and I could hear the forced casualness in her voice. I got your text. What did you mean by lawyer? Oh, that, I said, keeping my tone light. I have just been having some interesting conversations lately. You know how it is. What kind of conversations? Panic was starting to creep in. Honey, you are scaring me. Really? That is interesting. I would not think someone relaxing on a girl's getaway would have anything to worry about. There was a pause that lasted a beat too long. Of course not. It's just what lawyer? Why are you talking to a lawyer? Well, I said, leaning back in my chair and enjoying this more than I probably should have. When your wife suddenly extends a trip without warning to a place she has apparently never been to, a reasonable person might start asking questions. And when you ask questions, sometimes you need professional advice on what to do with the answers. The line went completely silent. I could practically hear her brain working, trying to figure out what I knew and what I was guessing. I do not know what. You think you know, she finally said, but you're being ridiculous. I am exactly where I said I was. Really? I asked. That is an interesting statement to make. Very specific, very confident. Of course I am. Why would I lie about that? That is exactly what I am. Wondering, I said. Why would you? She hung up on me. My phone immediately started buzzing with messages. Long paragraphs of explanations that contradicted each other, accusations that I was being paranoid and controlling, promises to come home right, a way to talk about it. Each message more desperate than the last. I put the phone down and made myself a sandwich. It was going to be a long week, but for the first time in months, I felt exactly where I needed to be, in control with the facts on my side and finally seeing my wife's true colors clearly. The best part was she had no idea what I really knew, and she definitely had no idea what I was going to do about it. The messages kept coming every few minutes, each one more frantic than the last. She was clearly spiraling, trying to figure out exactly what I knew while attempting to maintain her story. The funny thing about liars is that they always give themselves away by over-explaining. Honey, I think there has been a misunderstanding. I am definitely at the resort with the girls. Maybe the front desk made a mistake when you called. Those places can be disorganized. Except, I had never told her I called the resort. Strike one. The cell service here is terrible. That is why I have not been texting much. I can barely get these messages to go through, but those messages were coming through perfectly with full signal strength and read receipts. Strike two. I love you so much. I would never do anything to hurt our marriage. You know that, right? No. Innocent person starts with that kind of defensive statement. Strike three. I decided to dig a little deeper while she was busy crafting her explanations. The property records I had pulled earlier showed the house belonged to someone named Brandon Ellis. A quick LinkedIn search revealed he worked at the same marketing agency where my wife had been doing freelance projects for the last 6 months. The same projects that required so many late nights and weekend meetings. Suddenly, a lot of things started making sense. The new workout routine she had started, the way she dressed differently for work, the secretive phone calls she claimed were about client projects, the sudden interest in going out with friends I had Never met. My phone rang again. This time, I answered on the first ring. Okay, you need to stop this right now, she said, skipping any greeting. You are being completely unreasonable and paranoid. I am on a girl's getaway. Period. End of story. With which girls? I asked calmly because I am curious. You have mentioned this trip for weeks, but I have never heard any specific names. Humor me. Another pause. You? No, the usual group. The girls from work. From work? I thought it was a high school reunion trip. At least, that is what you told me last week. I what? No. I said work friends. You are mishearing things. Interesting, because I have a pretty good memory for details. Almost photographic, you could say. It comes in handy in my line of work. Are you trying to confuse me? She said, but her voice was shaking now. This is crazy. I cannot believe you do not trust me. Trust is earned, I said, and lately the evidence suggests my trust might have been misplaced. What evidence? You keep talking about evidence like you are some kind of detective. I almost laughed. She was making this too easy. Well, since you're asking, your phone's shared. Location shows you are not at a resort. Your social media posts show backgrounds that do not match where you claim to be staying. The resort has no record of your reservation, and most interestingly, your phone has been located at the exact same residential address for 3 days straight. Complete silence on the other end. Are you still there? I asked. Are you following along? Her voice was barely a whisper. You are tracking me? You voluntarily shared your location with me, remember? For safety, you said, in case of an emergency, I would say finding out my wife is lying about her whereabouts as an emergency. This is insane. You are being controlling. Am I? Because from where I am sitting, I am just asking basic questions that any husband would ask when his wife's story does not add up. Questions that apparently do not have good answers. She tried a different approach. Baby, listen to me. I know how this looks, but I can explain everything. Just give me a chance. Listening, I said, genuinely curious to see what she would come up with. Okay? So the thing is, one of the girls, she is going through a really bad divorce, and she did not want to stay at the resort because her ex knows people there. So we're staying at a friend of hers instead. I could not tell you because she made us promise to keep it a secret for her safety. Creative, I had to give her that. What is her name? Who? The friend, the one going through the divorce. I cannot tell. You, I promised. Right. And this friend's place where you were staying for her safety just happens to belong to a man named Brandon Ellis. The line went dead silent again. This time I could hear her rapid, shallow breathing. How do you know that name? She whispered. Oh, I know a lot of names. I know where he works. I know he's recently separated. I know he has been posting about his new bachelor lifestyle. I know your freelance work has taken you to his company an awful lot lately. Should I keep going? It is not what you think, she said quickly. Brandon is just a friend. We work together. The house thing, it is complicated, but it is not what you are imagining. What am I imagining? You think there is something going on between us, but there is not. He is just helping out with the trip because his place is bigger and his wife does not know either. His wife, his ex-wife, the one he is separated from. Does she know he is hosting married women for week-long getaways? I could practically hear her mind racing, trying to figure out how much I knew and how much I was guessing. The beautiful thing About the truth is that it does not require constant revision. Lies, on the other hand, need constant maintenance. I am coming home, she said suddenly. Tonight, we are going to talk about this face to face. That is not necessary, I said. Take your time. Enjoy your trip. I am certainly enjoying mine. Your trip? My trip down memory lane. It's what you discover when you start paying attention to patterns. 6 months of late nights, new clothes, secretive calls, and mysterious work projects. It is like a puzzle, and I am pretty good at puzzles. Stop it, she said, and now she was crying. Just stop. You are turning this into something it is not. Am I? Because I have not actually accused you of anything specific yet. I have just been asking questions and sharing observations. It is interesting that you are so defensive about simple questions because you are trying to trap me. I do not need to trap anyone. The truth has a way of coming out all on its own, usually sooner than people expect. After hanging up, I sat back and considered my next move. I had enough evidence to confront her directly, but I wanted to see how far this would go. More importantly, I wanted to make sure I was in the strongest possible position when everything came to light. That is when I decided to make a call of my own, not to a lawyer, not yet, but to someone who could help me understand exactly what I was dealing with and what my options would be when the time came. Because one thing was becoming crystal clear. This was not just a lying wife on a fake girl's getaway. This was a marriage built on deception for months, maybe longer, and that required a much more strategic response than just a heated argument. Friday morning brought the confirmation I was waiting for. My wife had made a critical mistake that was going to unravel everything. She posted an Instagram story having her morning coffee, showing a scenic view from what she claimed was the resort balcony. The problem was I recognized that view. It was the exact same view Brandon Ellis had posted from his deck 3 weeks earlier when he was bragging about his new house. But the smoking gun was not the view. It was the reflection in the sliding glass door behind her. Clear as day, you could see a man in casual loungewear walking around in the background. The same silhouette as Brandon in his LinkedIn profile pictures. The same dark hair, the same distinctive tattoo on his shoulder that was visible in his beach vacation photos from last summer. She had literally photographed her own lie. I took a screenshot of everything before she could delete it. Then I sat back and waited. Sure enough, within 20 minutes, the story disappeared. But by then I had already saved it with the metadata, showing the location where it was taken. My phone rang at exactly 10 o'clock in the morning. Hello, I said, answering on the second ring. Hey, honey. Her voice was different today, a forced cheerfulness, but with an undercurrent of nervousness. How are you doing? Fantastic. Just catching up on social media. You know how it is. It is amazing what people share online these days. What do you mean? Oh, just interesting seeing how technology works. GPS data, reflection, analysis, reverse image searches. It is like everyone is carrying a tracking device in their pocket without even realizing it. The pause was so long I thought she had hung up. I do not understand what you are talking about. She finally said, really? That is surprising. I figured someone who works in marketing would have a better understanding of digital footprints, especially someone who has been so careful to maintain a certain image. You are scaring me with all this tech talk. Can we just have a normal conversation? Sure. Let us talk about your Instagram Story from this morning. Nice view by the way. It really captures the essence of Brandon Ellis's deck perfectly. This time, the silence stretched on for so long that I checked to make sure the call had not dropped. I think you need help, she finally said. This paranoid behavior is not healthy. You know what is not healthy? Lying to your husband while posting evidence of that lie on social media. But hey, I appreciate the documentation. It makes things a lot clearer. I do not know what you think you saw, but I saw you having your coffee on Brandon Ellis's deck while a man walked around inside his house. Behind you, the same man whose shoulder tattoo matches the one in his beach photos from last summer. The same deck he posted 3 weeks ago. The exact same location your phone has been pinging from for 4 days. Dead silence. Are you still there? I asked. How long have you known her? Voice was barely audible. Which part? That you have been lying about this trip since yesterday. That you have been involved with Brandon for about an hour. Ever since you graciously provided photographic evidence. It is not what you think, she said. Quickly. It is complicated. Really? Because from where I am sitting, it looks pretty simple. A married woman lies to her husband, goes to another man's house, stays for days, and posts photos proving it. I am failing to see the complicated part. You do not understand. Brandon and I, we have a connection. Something real, something authentic. I actually laughed. Authentic? You have been lying to me for months. You created an elaborate story about a fake girl's getaway. You have been sneaking around behind my back. What part of that seems authentic to you? The feelings are authentic. What we have is solid. What you have is a married woman betraying her husband with a recently separated man who is probably telling you exactly what you want to hear. But sure, let us call it authentic. Do not talk down to me. I'm not talking down to anyone. I am just calling things what they are, which seems to be a foreign concept in this conversation. Fine, she said, and her voice shifted. Again, harder now, defensive. Yes, I have been seeing Brandon. Yes, we have been involved, but our marriage has been dead for months anyway. Really? That is news to me. I thought we were just going through a rough patch. Turns out you were just going through Brandon's house. Instead, do be like that. Do not be a hypocrite. You were the one who decided to handle marital problems by getting involved with someone else instead of talking to your husband. I tried to talk to you. You were never available. You are always working. You do not pay attention to me anymore. So your solution was to find someone who would pay attention to you without, mentioning that to me first. It just happened. These things happen. Sometimes. No, they do not happen. People make choices. You chose to start working late with Brandon. You chose to take his calls. You chose to develop feelings. You chose to act on them. You chose to lie to me about this trip. None of this just happened. I knew you would not understand. What I understand is that instead of working on our marriage, you decided to start a new relationship while keeping the old one as a safety net. That is not romantic. It is just selfish. It is not like that. Then explain to me how it is, because I am looking at a woman who has been lying to her husband for months, who created an elaborate deception to spend a week with another man, and who is now trying to justify it by claiming the marriage was already over. Help me understand the logic there. I love him, she said softly. Really? Or do you love the attention? Because there is a difference between loving someone and loving how they make you feel about yourself. I Love him, she repeated. And he loves me. Enough to marry you, enough to be seen with you in public, enough to build a life with you instead of just enjoying secret weekend get-togethers. We are taking things slow. You are taking things in secret. There is a difference. But hey, if sneaking around works for you, who am I to judge? I want a divorce, she said suddenly. Really? That is interesting timing. Literally minutes after getting caught in a lie, you suddenly know what you want. Very decisive. I should have asked for 1 month ago. Should have, could have, would have. But you did not. Instead, you decided to have your cake and eat it too. Keep the security of the marriage while exploring other options. Very convenient. I am coming home tonight. We need to talk about this properly. Actually, that is not necessary. I think we have covered the important point. You have been involved with someone else. You lied about it. You got caught and now you want a divorce. Pretty straightforward. We need to discuss the details. The house, the finances, how we handle this. Oh, we will definitely discuss the details. Just not in the way you were probably imagining. What does that mean? It means you might want to enjoy the rest of your vacation with Brandon because once you get back, things are going to get very interesting very quickly. I hung up before she could reply. My phone immediately started vibrating with messages, but I ignored them. I had more important calls to make now, starting with that lawyer I had mentioned, because it was time to turn this situation from reactive to proactive. The beautiful thing about evidence is that it changes the entire dynamic of the conversation. She had spent months thinking she was in control, managing 2 relationships, keeping her options open. Now she was going to find out what it felt like when someone else held all the cards. By noon on Friday, I was sitting across from attorney Robert Klein in his downtown office. I had chosen him specifically because he specialized in cases involving infidelity and had a reputation for being thorough and strategic. The kind of lawyer who understands that preparation wins cases, not emotion. So, you have documented proof of the inappropriate relationship, he said, reviewing the screenshots and location data I had brought, social media posts, GPS tracking, inconsistent stories. This is actually quite solid. That is just what I gathered in the last 24 hours. I told him, I suspect there is more if we dig deeper. There usually is. People think they are careful, but digital evidence is everywhere these days. Phone, records, credit card statements, email, trails. The question is, what outcome are you looking for? I want to protect myself financially and make sure this does not drag on for years. She mentioned wanting a divorce, but I suspect she expects me to be the grieving husband who gives her everything to make the pain go away. Klein smiled. That is not going to happen, is it? Not even close. We spent the next hour going over my finances, the property, and what he called damage control strategies. It turns out that thinking ahead had major advantages. The house was in my name only, bought before the marriage. Our joint accounts had reasonable balances, but my main assets were in individual accounts she had never had access to. More importantly, we had a prenuptial agreement that heavily favored the spouse who had not broken the marriage vows. She either forgot about the prenup or never took it seriously, Klein said. A lot of people sign them thinking they will never matter. This one definitely matters. How long until we can file? I can have the paperwork ready for Monday, but I suggest we document this weekend's activities first. If she plans to come home tonight, her behavior could provide additional evidence of her priorities. He was right. By the time I got home, Friday evening, my phone had 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. The progression was fascinating from a psychological standpoint. It started with anger at my attitude, shifted to justifying her actions, then to panic about what I might do, and finally to desperate attempts to control the narrative. You are being completely unreasonable about this whole situation. I deserve to be happy, and you have been emotionally distant for months. We can fix this if you calm down and listen to reason. Please do not do anything drastic. We can repair this. I am coming home tonight whether you like it or not. It is my house, too. That last one made me laugh. Technically, no, it was not her house, too, but she was going to learn that the hard way. I spent the night making practical preparations. I changed the garage codes, had a locksmith come to rekey the front and back doors, packed her belongings in her suitcases, and placed them near the front door. Nothing dramatic or disruptive, just efficient. She arrived Saturday morning at 8 o'clock, clearly expecting to walk right in. I watched through the window as she tried her key, realized it was not working, and started pounding on the door. Open this door. Right now, she yelled. You cannot lock me out of my own house. I opened the door and handed her the suitcases. Your things are packed. Everything should be in there. What do you think you were doing? Making things easier for everyone. You said you wanted a divorce, and you clearly chose to prioritize your relationship with Brandon. This just removes the logistical complications. You cannot just throw me out. I'm not throwing anyone out. You chose to spend your time at Brandon's house. I am simply acknowledging that preference and making it official. This is illegal. You cannot change the locks on your wife. Actually, I can. It is my house, spot before the marriage, title in my name. Only you are free to consult the lawyer if you disagree. She stared at me like I had a second head. Since when do you know property law? Since yesterday, when I consulted someone who specializes in situations exactly like this. You have already spoken to a lawyer? Did you think I was going to handle this with emotions and hope for the best? I prefer facts and strategy. I cannot believe you are being so cold about the end of our marriage. Our marriage ended when you decided to start a new relationship without finishing the old one. I am just handling the paperwork. She tried a different approach. Tears, apologies, claims that he made a mistake and wanted to fix things. The performance was actually pretty good, but I had had 24 hours to process everything, and I was not buying it. Let me ask you something. I said, if I had not caught you, how long were you planning to keep this up? Another week? Another month? Were you ever going to tell me, or were you just going to keep living a double life indefinitely? Duh. Not no. I was confused. Were you confused when you booked the fake girls getaway? Were you confused when you lied to my face about where you were going? Were you confused when you spent 4 days at another man's home? Stop being so cruel. I am not being full. I am being accurate. Cruel would be pretending this never happened and setting myself up to relive it in 6 months. People make mistakes. Marriages can survive this kind of situation. Some marriages can. Ours cannot, because this was not a mistake. It was a series of deliberate choices over several months. And more importantly, you are not really sorry it happened. You were sorry you got caught. That is not true. Is not it? Because 24 hours ago you were telling me how authentic your relationship with Brandon was, how you loved him, how you wanted a divorce. The only thing that changed is realizing I had proof. she could not argue with. That because it was exactly what had happened. Where am I supposed to go? That is no longer my problem. You had, for days to think about living arrangements while you were at Brandon's. I assume it did not cross your mind because you expected to keep both options available. I need time to find a place. You had months to think about this before starting the involvement. You had weeks to plan before taking this trip. You do not get to manage your exit strategy on my timeline now. I have rights as your wife had rights. Past tense. You gave them up when you decided that being someone else's partner was more appealing than being my wife. She stood there with her suitcases, probably realizing for the first time that actions actually have consequences, that you cannot treat your marriage like a safety net while you explore other options. This is not over, she finally said. You're absolutely right, I nodded. This is just the beginning. Monday morning, you will receive the divorce papers. I suggest you find yourself a good lawyer, because mine is very, very good at his job. After she left, I sat down with a cup of coffee and smiled for the first time in days. Not because my marriage was over, but because I had handled a bad situation in the smartest way possible. No begging, no drama, no giving opportunities to manipulate the outcome. Just facts, consequences, and a clear path forward that protected my interests while she dealt with the reality of her choices. Sunday afternoon, I discovered that my wife had decided to go on the offensive. My sister called me, confused and worried. Hey, I just got off the phone with your wife, she said. She says you threw her out over a misunderstanding about her trip. She sounds really upset. Did she mention the part where she has been involved with another man for months? What? No. She said you were being paranoid and controlling, that you accused her of something just because she extended a girl's getaway. Interesting version of events. Did she mention Brandon Ellis? Who? The man she has been seeing. The one whose house she is staying at instead of a resort. The one she photographed yesterday morning. My sister fell silent. Are you serious? Dead serious. I have screenshots, GPS, data, and a full confession from yesterday's phone call. She is trying to rewrite history, but the evidence does not lie. Within an hour, I was getting calls from her mother, my brother, and 2 of our mutual friends, all with the same story. Poor, confused, and hurt. Wife thrown out by a cruel husband who would not listen to reason. She had really committed to the victim narrative. That is when I decided it was time for some strategic truth. I started with her mother, since she had been the most aggressive in defending her daughter. Before you say anything else, I need you to look at something, I said, and I sent her the screenshot of my wife's Instagram story showing Brandon in the background. What am I looking at? Your daughter having coffee at her friend's house while he walks around inside behind her. That was taken yesterday morning while she was supposedly on a girl's getaway. The silence stretched on for almost a minute. There has to be an explanation. Her mother finally said, there is. She has been involved with him for months. She lied about the trip to spend a week with him. When I confronted her with evidence, she admitted everything and said she wanted a divorce. That does not sound like my daughter. Maybe you do not know your daughter as well as you think. I had similar conversations with everyone else she had contacted. The beautiful thing about real evidence is that it cuts through emotional manipulation very quickly. People might want to believe a sad story, but they cannot argue with photos and GPS data. By Sunday evening, the narrative had completely changed. Instead of receiving Calls supporting my wife I was getting. Calls asking how I was holding up and if I needed anything. But the most interesting call came from Brandon, Ellis's ex-wife. I hope you do not mind me reaching out, she said. I got your number from a mutual friend. I think we need to talk about what our spouses have been doing, because apparently Brandon told me he was working late and staying at the office. Not that he was hosting married women at our house. Our house is still technically marital property until the divorce is final, which means your wife stayed in my home without my knowledge or permission. That conversation got very interesting very quickly. It turns out Brandon had been feeding his wife the same lies my wife had been feeding me. Late nights at work, business trips, client meetings, all while conducting his involvement in what was still legally her house. I have documented everything from my divorce proceedings. She continued. Financial records, property usage, everything. Your wife's presence there actually helps my case significantly. How so? It proves he used marital assets to support his involvement, lodging, utilities, probably food and entertainment too. My lawyer says it strengthens my position considerably. We agreed to share information that could be useful for both our cases. She sent me financial records showing Brandon's spending patterns during the time he was seeing my wife, restaurants, hotels for prior meetings, even receipts from a jewelry store the week before their fake girls getaway. Meanwhile, my wife's social media became a liability instead of an asset. She had posted so many photos, trying to maintain her cover story that there was now a digital trail proving she had been lying for months. Photos from dinners at restaurants that she claimed were work meetings, check-ins at places that made no sense for freelance projects, even couple photos with Brandon that she had cropped to hide him. But the backgrounds and timestamps gave away the real story. Monday morning, Attorney Klein called with an update. Your wife's lawyer contacted my office this morning, he said. Apparently, she hired one. That was fast. It gets better. She is asking for spousal support because she gave up career opportunities to support your marriage. I burst out laughing. She has been freelancing the entire time we have been married. The only opportunities she gave up was the opportunity to be honest. It gets even better. She is also claiming you have anger management issues and that she was afraid to come home. Based on what? Evidence. Based on the fact that you changed the locks and packed her bags. Her lawyer is trying to paint it as controlling and aggressive behavior, even though she had been living with another man for 4 days. Apparently, that is irrelevant to her emotional well-being. How is this going to work out for her? Not well. Especially when we present the evidence of the involvement, the financial records showing where she was really spending her time, and the prenup. Her lawyer might be good, but they cannot argue with the facts. The real turning point came Tuesday afternoon. My wife showed up at my office, causing a scene in the lobby and demanding to talk. Security called me downstairs and I found her crying and claiming I was ruining her life. You destroyed everything, she said in front of about 20 people. I made a mistake and you are acting like I am some kind of criminal. A mistake, I said calmly. You have been involved with someone else for months. You lied to me repeatedly. You created an elaborate deception to spend a week with him. Which part of that was a mistake? I never wanted this to happen. You wanted it all to happen. You just did not want to get caught. I love him, she said, apparently forgetting that she was supposed to be playing the victim who wanted to save our marriage. The lobby went completely silent. Everyone stared at this woman who had just admitted to loving another man while begging her husband to take her back, then go be with him. I said, but stop trying to make me the villain in your story. She realized what she had just done, looked around at all the witnesses, and practically ran out of the building. By Thursday, she had stopped calling. Her lawyer had apparently explained to her that publicly admitting to the involvement while claiming to be the injured party was not a great legal strategy. The best part was Brandon, Ellis's ex-wife, had decided to make their situation public too. She posted a detailed account on social media about discovering her husband's involvement and how his other partner was living in her house. She did not mention my wife by name, but she did not need to. The details were specific enough that anyone who knew either of them could connect the dots. My wife's freelance career evaporated almost overnight. It turns out marketing agencies do not like being associated with messy personal scandals. Her social circle vanished too, since most of our mutual friends had picked sides based on the proof rather than the sob story. By the end of the week, she was facing divorce proceedings, a damaged reputation, a loss of income, and a relationship with a man who was also going through his own messy divorce while losing half his assets. But here is the thing about consequences. They are not punishments. They are just the natural outcome of choices. She had chosen to lie, betray, and manipulate. Now, she was experiencing what happens when your choices catch up to you. And for the first time in months, I felt exactly where I needed to be, in control of my situation, surrounded by people who respect honesty and moving forward with a clear conscience. 3 months later, everything was finalized. The divorce went exactly as attorney Klein had predicted. The prenup held up perfectly. My wife got exactly what she had contributed to the marriage, which was not much, and I kept everything I had brought in. The financial toll on her was significant. Without steady freelance income and facing legal fees, she burned through her savings quickly. Brandon was not much help either, since he was dealing with his own expensive divorce and the reality that his wife was getting half of everything, including the house where the involvement had taken place. Last I heard, my ex-wife was working in retail and living in a studio apartment across town. Brandon had moved back in with his parents during his own divorce proceedings. It turns out that kind of connection does not pay the bills when both people are financially destroyed by their bad choices. The irony was not lost on me that she had thrown away a stable marriage for a relationship that collapsed under the weight of its own deception in the weeks following its exposure. As for me, I got exactly what I wanted: a clean break, financial security, and my self-respect intact. No begging, no drama, no years of ugly legal battles, just consequences delivered efficiently and definitively. I kept the house, obviously redecorated it completely, removing every trace of our marriage and making it truly mine. I got a promotion at work, partly because my focus improved dramatically once I was no longer managing a dishonest spouse. I started dating again, but this time with a much clearer understanding of what behavior I would and would not accept. The best part was the peace of mind. No more wondering where she really was when she worked late. No more analyzing every conversation for hidden meanings. No more walking on eggshells around someone who is lying to my face while planning their exit strategy. My friends and family had nothing but respect for how I had handled the situation. Instead of being the guy who got betrayed and destroyed. I was the guy who discovered a problem and solved it strategically. The difference in those narratives matters more than people realize. 6 months after the divorce was final, I bumped into her at Target. She looked tired, older, stressed. I nodded politely and continued my shopping. She tried to start a conversation about how things had ended between us, but I kept it simple. I hope you're doing well, I said, but we have nothing to discuss. I know I hurt you, she started. You made choices, I corrected. I managed the consequences of those choices. There is nothing complicated about it. Do you ever think about what could have happened if we had tried couples therapy? Instead, do you ever think about what could have happened if you had talked to me instead of starting another relationship? Because that seems like the more relevant question. She did not have an answer to that. Walking away, I realized I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no regret. Just a mild sense of satisfaction that I had handled a bad situation in the smartest way possible. She wanted to rewrite our history into something where she was the misunderstood wife and I was the controlling husband. Instead, she became the woman who threw away a good marriage for a fantasy that lasted exactly as long as it took for reality to set in. The truth is simple. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. The first time when someone chooses to betray your trust, do not give them an opportunity to do it again. When someone tries to make their bad choices your problem, refuse to participate. I learned that respect is not something you give automatically in a marriage. It is something you maintain by making choices worthy of respect. My ex-wife stopped making those choices, so she stopped earning that respect. The ending is not dramatic or complicated. I am happier, healthier, and in a much better position than when I was married to someone who lied to me every day. She is dealing with the long-term consequences of prioritizing short-term attention over long-term stability. It is not revenge. It is just how life works when you make consistently bad decisions. And honestly, I would not change a thing about how I handled it. Comment. I really appreciate you watching this story with an open heart, because moments like these remind us all how fragile a trust can be in relationships. What stands out to me is how crucial it is to hold on to your self-respect when someone crosses a line. Setting healthy boundaries is not about pushing people away. It's about choosing the peace you truly deserve. I hope this encourages you to reflect on the relationships in your life and make sure they are built on honesty and mutual care. Taking responsibility for your own healing can feel scary at first, but it opens the door to real growth. Being kind to yourself first makes it easier to let go of what no longer serves you. I want you to remember that it is okay to walk away from situations that drain your spirit. Every choice we make toward calm and clarity brings us closer to the life we want. Let's keep supporting one another in creating spaces filled with respect and genuine connection. Thanks for being here with me today and for thinking about how these lessons might fit into your own journey. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.